This video is sponsored by Nebula, more details at the end. Mixtape is a game that's not great. If you know my channel, you might have expected me to claim the opposite, but I don't know, it doesn't really do much for me. Passion is an emotion that pierces right through the middle of your mind and forces you to go somewhere extreme, and while it'd be nice for every major project to turn that direction towards the divine, Mixtape, it's cringe. I don't like to associate with people that use the word cringe too much, but it's cringe. The premise is okay, the writing is overly cute a la Life is Strange, and yes, there was no central game mechanic. It's largely animated, roughly 2 hours long, and filled with licensed music, which besides the licensed music is nothing new for the world of video games. What's actually interesting about the game is the sphere of anger surrounding it. Unsurprisingly, it's been caught in the ever-roaring tornado of Gamergate YouTubers, but that's not the pushback I'm talking about. The much more broad problem most gamers have with it is truly simple. Mixtape is not a video game. To them. Now, I want to be very clear that I'm not accusing anyone of being racist who thinks this isn't a video game. These are fairly separated reactions. In fact, the pure amount of average gamers upset about this is the most interesting part to me. Mixtape is very much not the first game to stoke the fires of this exact discussion, but every time it happens, it goes absolutely nowhere because nobody is willing to ask the seemingly simple question at the core of absolutely everything. What actually is a video game? Video games are fascinating for a million reasons, this is a whole channel about them, but the claim that X is not a video game is one of the most fascinating little side quests. There are truly few mediums I can think of where this is a claim that people even make at all. It's sometimes used in the rhetorical sense, like an elitist poet claiming limericks are not poetry, but that's not what's being claimed by gamers. They are literally claiming that this thing that is similar to video games and exists on the same platforms and was developed by a game development studio does not fit the definition of what a video game is. Also, doubly importantly, nobody says if they actually like or dislike the product. Dispatch is a game that released in 2025 and has just about as much gameplay as a choose-your-own-adventure book. It was made by Ad Hoc Studio, a newcomer largely comprised of Telltale Games veterans, another studio long at the forefront of this discussion but never once as intense as Mixtape. Dispatch, unlike the cel-shaded graphics of the Ghost of Dialogue Tree's past, is a slick, polished, artsy, cinematic world filled with superheroes and supervillains, intrigue, and a little bit of charm. The question of is this a video game was brought up just by nature of Dispatch being massively popular, but all discussions were extinguished by the absolute flood of praise, including from IGN, and the fact that all of our cool Blorbos got voice acting roles, look at all of them. For the Steam Awards that year, an entirely user-voted award show, it was nominated for Game of the Year and won the category of Outstanding Story-Rich Game, a category for games with little gameplay. This time is just said in the nice way, because the assertion that something isn't a video game is inherently insulting and demeaning. There isn't an alternative medium given, and often no further criticism, because the claim that this definitionally isn't a part of the genre is claim enough to dismiss the whole art piece. Mixtape is not a video game. Nothing more needs to be said. Part of this stems from the fact that video games are one of the only mediums with, like, a fandom by itself. Yes, there are movie nerds, yes, there are painting snobs, but the average person has watched many movies and seen many paintings. They are suffused into the very fabric of our society, as intertwined as anything else could be into the way that we exist. Video games are not and never have been that way. The closest we got to it was during the arcade era, arcades existing as a piece of art infrastructure that people can physically go to, like a theater or a gallery. But home consoles more or less wiped out the presence of arcades culturally, and in the era of home consoles, a bubble formed around gaming essentially through price alone. $60 has been the premium game price since the 80s. Going by inflation, in the mid-80s, people were paying the equivalent of $180 for one video game. Consoles have also been expensive since forever, they are a specialized piece of technology, and these two hurdles alone form an economic barrier around the very concept of playing a video game. Still, for people who grew up in cities, they tend to know someone who had one of the consoles, and so gaming was an activity you could do physically with your friends. It was an event in the same way running across the street, dodging cars, and throwing rocks at each other's balls was. I didn't grow up in the 80s, I don't know. The fandom of video games as we know it only started to form in the vast, empty, soulless suburbs of the United States. Being filled with middle to upper middle class families and being completely unable to hang out with friends unless your parents drive you, once consoles started to get their own isolated internet, that was the way some friend groups interacted with each other. For my upbringing at least, if you had a PS4 and your friends had an Xbox One, you didn't speak to those friends outside of school. It's one of the only cases existing of there being a popular, isolated micro-internet. And in that isolation from the world, a group of largely suburban teenagers started to coagulate into its own community by itself. Now, rather than the flat statement that being a moviegoer is, being a gamer meant something very specific. It was and is a cultural character and often not seen in a great light because the suburbs have bigotry problems. I'm just being real. The shit I heard as a kid said to me in full confidence would terrify you. The gaming community since has had many more people join it, but its initiation has created a grand filter, one that keeps out a lot of people that would otherwise join it. So while there are many normal people into gaming, there will always be a giant sect that thinks COD lobbies filled with slurs and screaming 12-year-olds was somehow the good old days. Anyways, this makes the claim of what is and isn't a part of the medium of video games very important. It's the difference between being in an in-group or an out-group, what can be claimed within the identity of what a gamer is and is associated with. And many normal people don't want Mixtape to be in the video game canon. And in this case, the primary factor for most is all about interactivity. Now, interactivity is so fraught a topic that it's impossible not to say something controversial, so I'll open with my most controversial statement. There is no difference between Uncharted 4 and Mixtape. If anyone is under any impression that Uncharted 4 has real gameplay elements, you are simply insane. 99% of AAA titles are hardly games in the sense that most people think they are, and have perfected the science of power fantasy handholding. There is not a moment you will actually be challenged in any meaningful way over the course of any of these games, from God of War Ragnarok to Tomb Raider. The games I play most are games, and as a result, most often AA or indie games like Rocket League, Trackmania, Peak, Phantom Forces on Roblox until they fucking ruined it. I don't tend to find the wide appealing railroading style of game very interesting by default, and the storytelling in most of them is just underwhelming. To pretend Mixtape is especially unique for this is to delude yourself. It just has more unique problems than most video game storytelling. This then of course calls into question what a game is. If there is an objective, but you face essentially zero difficulty and little decision making in the course of getting there, is it a game? Yes. Just yes. See, even though I don't like AAA handholding simulators, they are undoubtedly games. Imaginative play, make-believe, is also a game, despite often being somewhat aimless and without something to achieve. In some sense, even though we'd like to feel like super mature adults, many video games are imaginative play made digitally physical, interactable. You get to be the cool white-haired guy riding around on horses and slaying evil beasts. Even then, with such a versatile medium, literally a third dimension being given to the aesthetics of flat, linear media like movies, there are people who simply love to create edge cases. Visual novels have long been associated with video games while not necessarily being considered them. They are sold on video game marketplaces and played almost entirely by gamers, with uploads by gaming YouTubers, and even made on something very similar to video game engines, often Ren'Py. And yet, despite that, most people given a little time to think would not call visual novels video games, but might call Dispatch one. They are, in essence, the same thing. You look at a screen as dialogue, either voice or text, tells a story with very little interaction and the occasional consequential story choice. Some visual novels even have small minigames regularly, DDLC having the poetry making game Between Days, for example. The difference between these two things, I think, is that one is a world and one isn't. Immersion in the sense of video games is different materially from that of immersion into a book. While reading, your mind is doing the work in interpreting and painting the words into a self-consistent world in your mind, but one that's interpretation is entirely contained within yourself. Immersion for video games is, instead, your mind witnessing this abstraction of a world in all of its concrete details and partially buying into the idea that this is a place and the things in it are happening. Conversations in Dispatch happen in a room between two physical, consistent people. Conversations in visual novels happen between two PNGs on a reused backdrop, helpful for imagination but not all-encompassing and, more importantly, without the ability to seamlessly read this as a physical location. Zooming even further into where this line is, there are some visual novels people might consider video games while not considering others. Doki Doki Literature Club, for example, again, uses interactivity as a part of its subversion. Your only interaction in a more tangible sense is on the meta layer, your game files, but that makes it feel much more tangible. By understanding that the world of DDLC is not some imagined thing puppeted by stand-in models and backdrops, but rather literally a visual novel on an engine, it somehow takes the effect of buying this as a world, just a flat one. However, you don't even need to be meta necessarily. There's a visual novel called Tiny Bunny that's just recently released after years and years of work, and for good reason. I've talked about it once on this channel, but only on the way it interacts with mystery and the nature of nature. The thing that it perhaps stands out most for is neither of those things, but rather the fact that there is almost no part of the game that reuses assets. For only the most common locations do you ever see a frame of this game a second time, and even within the home you come to inhabit in Tiny Bunny, the environment is highly subject to change. Shelves can open, windows can be seen through, the lights can turn on and off. Outside the home, we're subject to every beautiful depiction of the brutal, concrete, isolated town Anton is subjected to, surrounded on all sides by the alluring and terrifying expanse of the winter forest. This is, convincingly, a place where you might just go insane and run off into the night, never to be seen again. Yet further, while interaction is scarce, you do interact with the environment. Moments of horror often involve the actual world being touched and manipulated, a mitten sopping with blood hanging from a branch, a curtain begging to be opened as a shadow casts on it from the outside. The visual and textural here is not used to assist the story, it is as important as the writing, and I feel as I play that this is a world that I'm interacting with, and that's using this feeling of video game immersion to convince me that I am not safe in my own mind. This is a world, and it is subject to terrify me. Some might draw the line here, that despite its illustration, Tiny Bunny is not a video game. I counter you with this: video games aren't video games. Jan Miseli, professional asker of questions, made one in a series of ontological questionnaires asking, what is a video game? The poll consisted of a lot of edge cases, things that involve interaction, a screen, and technology, and games that for one reason or another seemed a little bit questionable. Is Wii Chess a video game if it is literally just chess but on the Wii? If not, is Clubhouse Games a video game? The same concept as Wii Chess but with 51 games. Is Wordle a video game? Its automatic guest judging system would be impossible to print on a newspaper, and it is a game. Hell, going back to Wii Chess, is Chess.com a video game? It is literally just chess but hosted digitally, and yet you play it with video and it has some features that only technology can do. How about interactive movies like Black Mirror Bandersnatch, Homestuck, Polybius? Hell, and this one's pretty rough, what about Mario Bros for the Game & Watch? Is this a video if it's just a bunch of static images that get lit up via logic gates? Well, there's no answer to any of these. The way they pick apart how we define video game makes clear one single thing to me. Video game is a bad term. Most of these examples necessarily use video and are games, and yet one that technically doesn't use video is the clearest video game here. Once a term starts forcing you to make awkward, unintuitive decisions to make the term work, its usefulness completely falls apart. And yet, those two signifying words are in fact the thing used to damn walking simulators as outside the video game canon, unacceptable as what we can consider part of this widely varying genre. And here's the truly stupid thing on top of this ever so perilously stacked tower of stupidity. Mixtape just is a video game, even by the strange definitions others give to the genre. It just is. Okay, so I played the game. Like, I actually played it, front to back, which is better than 99% of people even talking about it, so let's actually look at what happens in all of Mixtape. Have you seen anyone actually do that? Whatever, let's begin. Mixtape is a narrative adventure game following the character of teenager Stacy Rockford and her friends Van Slater and Cassandra Cass Marino. The player follows events as well as learns the backstories of these characters through playable vignettes throughout the game, such as skateboarding down a hilly road, slinging rocks across a pond, or exploring a rundown dinosaur park. Okay, my own writing now. The game is, by structure, a playable soundtrack, but only in the sense of what Stacy claims soundtracks to do. Each song is linked to some important event of the friendship binding these three together on the last day they have before splitting apart. I don't think anyone would, by default, turn down that idea. The issues largely come in the execution. In terms of art direction, I actually think the game is really solid. There's a surprising depth to the degree of thoughtfulness put into everything. We see a past idealized memory in Stacy's mind as being shot on a set with LED panels instead of the actual road, showing the literal artifice of memory in a way you may genuinely miss. In general, the game is simply quite pretty, and in fact arguably beautiful in every moment the characters are not opening their mouths. The obsession with other forms of media, while done tastefully in the overall, is utterly soured by the pure stench that emanates from the dialogue. They are intentionally meant to be at least a little bit obnoxious. They are teenagers, but there is simply no reality where this is all intentional. There's also some mixed signals between the various vectors of art expression which clouds the meaning of the game. There is a reality where the story was taken to show the mind of someone incredibly closed off from others, who has been so obsessed with their emotional boulder, music, that they have built a dogmatic system of belief around it. So much so that she is willing to abandon her closest friends to chase her dream. That could be the writing of the game's story if the game's direction did not also glorify the exact point that Stacy is trying to make. We are enchanted by the power of music, or at least the world of Mixtape itself is, and that feels really weird. I have no idea who or what the anchor point of the story is from a basic thematic ideological perspective. Is it a coming-of-age story if the main character doesn't mature? Is the entire message that music is just fucking sick as hell? And again, this isn't even getting into the dialogue, which is, at its best, saccharine, and at its worst, the writers directly speaking to you through a faux millennial sock puppet. Now, to be clear, I know that by agreeing that some parts of the game suck, that I'm aligning myself somewhat with a lot of the YouTubers I despise, but I'm also not gonna lie to you. I agree that the writing is really bad, but there just is interactivity, and a lot of it. Well over half the game has you doing things. The actual full cutscenes are actually rather brief, shorter than most major games. They are very integral to the experience, but also do serve the regular role cutscenes do, which is giving context to the next segment of gameplay. I'm sure that running around shooting CPUs in Call of Duty has some entertainment value, but knowing that you're doing it to stop a drone-fueled global uprising makes it feel much more something. I couldn't call it impactful or meaningful. I don't care about Black Ops 2's plot really, but without that story, I wouldn't have even entertained the gameplay. Similarly, despite finding the dialogue unbearable, the story absolutely adds still to the gameplay of Mixtape and vice versa. You are not in some spinning object going down a track, you're escaping the police by riding a shopping cart. That's a little bit cool. Hell, the game made me laugh 2 whole times, and one was due to gameplay. Mixtape is heavily linear, even more so than a lot of linear games, but that's out of a very specific effort to blend story and game as much as possible. Many people don't like how restrictive it feels, and yet this goal allows the game to use the Ludonarrative, the story told through gameplay, to do some actually unique things. The minigame to make me laugh is one of the ones people were ripping their hair out over, by the way. So during one cutscene remembering a long-lost love's kiss, you very suddenly, very jarringly cut to a game where you control both tongues as they wetly, limply collide into each other. When you've already decided that you hate this game, I can understand being fine to hate this too, but come on. The fucking gall to do this in the first place is what made me laugh. This is actual shock humor, the thing edgy humor tries to do but can't anymore due to the utterly deadening force of the internet. People actually got shocked and they actually got pearl clutchy about it, which makes this just even funnier. Anyways, to not draw this out any further, here is an incomplete list of things that need to be considered not interactive in order for Mixtape to not be a video game. Driving sequences, chase sequences, moving around a location and talking to people, inspecting objects to gain more information about them, affecting things in a scene in order to get better or worse photos, aiming and then pulling a trigger to move a projectile that will hit something, aiming and swinging at a baseball as it comes towards you. The list goes on. The only difference I can actually see between some of these and most video games is that these gameplay segments aren't forcefully repeated every 10 minutes between major story cutscenes in order to pad out the runtime. Would a grind make this a video game suddenly? Hell, let's address the other argument, that Mixtape doesn't have stakes. Even in the minigames you can technically fail, it just rewinds you and lets you try again. I wonder where they got that idea. Are you telling me that the difference between a video game and not a video game is the amount of time you are set back for failing? This is also ignoring that games don't need to have lose conditions, and many video games don't have any. Hell, them not having lose conditions makes way more sense for what they're going for. Did you have an ability to fail skipping rocks? Would it be better suited to the vibe of the game to be able to get hit by a car and die horribly and then reset you just a bit earlier than it already does? Memories can shift, they can be altered by time, even embellished by strong emotions, but these are memories we're revisiting. You are feeling in both an audiovisual and gameplay sense how these things felt, not trying to win or lose at the act of remembering. The last argument I've heard, and the one I feel has the most merit, is that the gameplay doesn't do anything for the story even as it's happening. I can understand this view. There are some chapters that feel like they had to come up with a game and just did it, but gameplay doesn't always need to matter to the story. While Mixtape is story-rich, interaction serves a very basic and yet necessary structural role in how this game can play out. Let's go back to the very start of the game, the first skate sequence. From start to finish, assuming no mistakes, it takes around 3.5 minutes to complete. There is no show or movie on Earth that would have a scene this long with so relatively little happening. That's not an insult to Mixtape. There is an eternal bind that popular art is in. I don't know the right term, but I call it the key jingling tax. If you want wide audience appeal, often what you need to be profitable, you need to keep the audience stimulated. This was a thing before the internet and has been since popular art existed. If you like a piece of art and it's relatively popular, it does this. It simply does. Even taking the gameplay of Mixtape at its most cynical, assuming the absolute worst intentions on the behalf of the developers, wanting the gameplay to just exist for their story, it is still important for the sole reason that it gives the player time to absorb this feeling. The nature of these characters, the glowing sun, the soundtrack, the sound of wheels on pavement, the lifestyle that will lead to riding down a mountain, dodging cars with your friends. Space is so difficult to afford in popular art, and one of the biggest strengths of video games is inherently affording it. Journey is entirely wordless and largely walking, and it stays engaging because you're the one walking. Would Journey be better as a movie? And this is, again, only taking their intentions with Mixtape at its most cynical. Taking it rather as a team experimenting and having some things fall flat, you have these small moments in the game. Ones where it really feels like the gameplay is in harmony with everything else. The absolute best of Mixtape comes in the form of Chapter 10, the Ritz discovery, a walk through the woods. Until now, much of the present tense in the game has been walking around houses and scouring for memories, and this is no different. Your movement, your walking, has been unbearably slow for the entire game. Even with environments that consist of 3 rooms, it still takes way too long to move from one to the other. And so, when it flashed back to a walk through the woods, I was not feeling especially hopeful. And despite this section having the other joke I laughed at,
Slater, are shorts metal?
I think cargo shorts are.
Is industrial military-derived clothing metal, though?
I don't fucking know.
a lot of it is just walking and talking, far more than any other section gameplay-wise. That is, until you're close to what you're looking for. You were sent cryptically by your older sister to follow a map, and just before getting there, in one of the only times in the entire game, you bear witness to this grand, rolling field open in the middle of a dense forest. As I saw it for the first time, it made me realize that everything before now has been a dense forest in feeling. Alleyways in your hometown, a house you can hardly move through, even as you skate, held in by guardrails. Stacy feels this too, a lifetime surrounded by walls a bit closer than is comfortable, and so too do her best friends. And so, as you start to run through the field, you get faster and faster and faster, and suddenly you start floating, flying. You're picked up by gusts of wind like a leaf, glide back down, only this time to jump willingly, gravity existing only just enough to make sure you don't float away. The field gets larger, the trees towering, seemingly extending itself for the sake of making this singular freedom last a little while longer. And playing this, even as it was happening, as I felt free for the first time in Mixtape, I realized this is gameplay as storytelling. This is something that could never exist in any other medium. You have been restricted, the game has never pretended otherwise. In this moment, we, and she, feels the taste of true, pure freedom, escape from this place that has chained down all 3 of our protagonists. While Stacy's dream to become a music supervisor is short-sighted and immature, in this moment, I can feel why she would chase it. She wants life to feel this way, to not have it confined to that one perfect memory. This is what interactivity does. This is what gameplay can do, and Mixtape did it. I don't expect anyone to stop using the term video game, in fact, I won't, but I would feel silly if I didn't give something to recontextualize what this medium is. In my opinion, the annoyingly technical term should be interactive digital world. A world with consistent people and properties, entirely or partially digital, that can be affected by the player's actions in some way. Most of them are games, not all of them are. Wordle is not a video game, Mario for the Game & Watch is. And even without this deliberation, so too is Mixtape. In my opinion. Those 3 words are a badge that means I'm suddenly impossible to criticize. Anyone who disagrees with me in the comments better get flooded with "it's just their opinion, I swear to God!" It's my opinion that YouTubers should only sponsor what makes sense for them and only in things they believe in. For me, that'd be video game studios, computer equipment, or most fitting for a YouTuber, a video service, and there's only one I've ever liked so much that I decided to join it myself. Nebula is precisely that, a streaming service run and founded by YouTubers for the sake of having more freedom to make what they want. Freedom not just to have ad-free videos, but to give creators the opportunity to make bigger and better content. Before I even joined, I was a massive fan of Jetlag the game, and I still am, all the way up to the announcement of their newest season, Stateside Scramble, a rush to get the largest connected piece of land by claiming states over the course of multiple days. Just the exact kind of shit I love. While you don't play Jetlag, you get to watch 3 cute little nerds do it, and they make the whole experience fantastic. On Nebula, you get episodes an entire week earlier, as well as thousands of curated ad-free videos from some of the best, most thoughtful channels on all of YouTube. There is simply no place more curated for people who love thoughtful, substantive videos of any kind, as well as exclusive content from many of the channels you almost certainly already love, including me. I have multiple bonus videos available to watch right now, and I am far from the only one. You can get all of this and more for 50% the regular price at just $30 a year, or $250 for an entire month using my code. You've bought video games you've never touched for more money than an entire year of this service. If you're curious, the link is in the description or in the QR code on screen. Trust me, it's worth it. And now it's time for the Patreon shoutouts. Thanks for getting to the very end of the video and past the sponsor. Normally I would do a whole spiel about Patreon, but I have a sponsor and I don't want to have like giant padding on my videos that are just a bunch of stuff that's not the video. I hate when YouTubers do that. So I'm just going to call out all the names. If you want to support me on Patreon, do it. I also have a Discord. Those are the 2 main things. The Discord's cool as shit. Let's call out names. Special Patreon shoutouts to Martin Lewis, Axion, Edmund Dong, MF Bitchboy, Owen McGee, Wayne Wheeler, Cat Called Blep, Lucky on Fleek, Beanie Guitar Guy, Damage43, Artilus, John M, Dom Creative, Crazy Rooster Eye, Freya Core, Brambles Hopper, Opposite to 5150, oh my god these names, Oreo, Bestest Patron, Jacob Falk, Ted H, A Simple Lamp, Ro Ramden, Jocelyn, Owen, Stickman Mayhem, Gerberly, Rudy Schubring, Peter Healy, Christian Koch, Celestial Tangle, Kevin Paulson, Poetry Stud, Necra, MC Logic Master 69, Jesus, R2, JP Benini, Tricky Goose, Nicotina, Danny Miller, Crimson Aurora, Sistine Capella, Umbrella, Truman Tietmeyer, Pixel, Halberry, Ji Kong, I Love Aqua, Artemis, Sir Rhino, Ambient Isotopy, Lucy Tara E. Hrabenka Horaka, Beatus, Joy McStinky, Matthew Craig, Zombro Boss, and that's it. Thank you so much for watching again, and have a fantastic day.